Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast. For each week, we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. I even see Lauren didn't know it. I called her while the music was playing. She was bopping to it. You know, it's hard to not bop to that theme music. Thanks to Jay for making that many moons ago. We appreciate it. But today, if you were following all of our posts, all of our messages on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, you know, I was trying to put graffiti on the side of buses if I thought it would work, whatever it was going to take to let everyone know that we have with us. We'll be kind to her. She is a Bengals fan. You know, they've had a disappointing year.
100%.
So close. Just because, remember, they get the same parade that we got in Baltimore. You didn't get a ring. I don't care. But we did this, just so folks know as you're listening, like, man, why is he being so mean to her? Because we busted each other's chops the first time we talked about the exact same things. So this is just going to continue on. But we have brought on and I'm curious what Lauren would tag it her title as, but I like saying after sports coach or, you know, post sports life coach. She helps athletes, and most of us, look, I've said this in all my posts, most of us at high school were done with sports. But that next level athlete who's dedicated that extra time, that put that extra effort, that 10,000 hour person, they're going to hit a point where it ends. So that's what Lauren does, and she's got a great story about how she got into it. It's very intriguing. So, Lauren, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast.
Well, thank you so much. Ooh.
Yeah, you get applause.
I love it. Thank
you
you so much, Sean. No, I didn't. This is amazing.
For an athlete, this is what it's all about, right?
Of course. Give me all the glory. Yes. That's what I want. That's what I need.
So welcome. Let's get the house cleaning out of the way.
Okay.
We'll get that done. So first things first, as always, folks, we got sticker and a cause. If you've got something that you're supporting, you've got a podcast of your own, you've got a charitable organization, which I'm going to mention something real quick here in a moment that I think everyone's going to want to hear. You've got something that you're supporting. If you reach out to me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, email is the Above the Bar podcast. It's all the Above the Bar podcast. You send me a message. I'll tell you where to set the address. We'll send it. You can send me a sticker. You send me that sticker like Dibs did, and Miles Grix from the Gaylord Snow sent me a sticker. He would have been a great one. I should introduce you. That's a guy he was a collegiate athlete who got hurt, lost an opportunity, but found a way to own his own sports team. I'd say very cool. Yeah. Very the movie Semi-Pro, which is so great.
Oh, yeah.
So send me your sticker. We'll throw it up there on the board just like they did. We'll get that situated. Also, folks, as always, if your media, maybe your media needs to graduate to a new program. Your media needs a little bit of an upgrade. Make sure you reach out to Media by Dibs. You can find Dibs on LinkedIn under Andrew Dibble, but he's also on Facebook and he's also on Instagram as Media by Dibs. That's DIBS, Media by Dibs. And if you mention to him, hashtag belly up to the bar, you say belly up to the bar to him, he's going to give you a 10% discount right off the rip on your first order for media stuff. Then he's also going to give you a free consultation to let you know kind of what can he do for you? How can he make your media that much better? So remember, Media by Dibs. And now I got to throw this out. This is sidebar. This is new. So if you'd watched Saturday's show, we had Eli the Bee Guy. And Eli's out in California. Phenomenal guy. And Eli does bee rescue, like remediation, like rescuing the bees. And I learned this thing, and I have to throw this out real quick. Lauren, did you know that there's a thing? We've all heard of African killer bees, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Did you know there's a thing called Caucasian bees?
That's a new one for me.
You know what the one that I really liked was, though? Italian bees. Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and make it a honey. The Italian bee. I'm gonna go ahead and make it a honey. I'm gonna go ahead and take the honey back, and then we'd make it a little pasta. So I reached out to my daughter. This will be going up. I maybe I'll do it after this one. But she actually, my daughter who did our logo and everything, created an Italian bee for me.
Oh, nice.
And it's little, I guess it would be a mandible. I guess what would they call it? Bee legs? I don't know. It's sticking out.
I'm a political science major. I have no idea.
That is like, so you're like every other athlete. I'm a poli-sci major. We'll get into that even. But the little bee hand is sticking out like it's doing this.
Yeah.
Like it's doing the Italian 3-finger shake. So we're going to put that out. And with a plan for those shirts is when we put those on TeePublic, whatever we sell from those, 100% of that proceeds, we're going to find a Save the Bee organization. Whatever I make off of those, we're going to give it to Save the Bees. So
nice.
We're all about it. And you've already got people popping up. My buddy Nathan, what's up, brother?
Hey, Nathan.
Scott Kelsey. I saw Scott post on. Scott post on LinkedIn. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you getting with us on that. So let's get into it. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What's your sport? Let's talk about your sports background, because that's really where all this is born.
100%. So the story goes, I don't remember this part, but the story goes, I have 2 older sisters who were already swimming. All right. So full disclosure, swimming was my sport. I am a very rare one sport athlete. Did it my entire life. That's all I ever did. So the story goes, my mom, I was very bothersome when it came to snacks. I always needed food. I was always bothering her. So she just said, you know what? You're going in too. I'm done listening to you. You need to get some energy out. So she literally threw me in the pool. And literally, the story ends 17 years later. So I also only swam. I was going to say I only swam for one team. That's not true. The first year I ever swam at the age of 5, I swam for one team. And then at 6, we grew up in Northern Kentucky. So if anybody understands Cincinnati geography, Northern Kentucky, Southwest Ohio, and Southeast Indiana all connect, right? And we're a stone's throw from everyone. There weren't a ton of competitive teams in Northern Kentucky at the time. So we go over the river into Ohio on a team called Emmy Lions, Anderson Barracudas Emmy Lions YMCA. The story also goes, yeah, I know, right? ABLY is what we called it. The story also goes, and my mom didn't tell me this until like 5 years ago. I was the youngest swimmer. I was actually too young to join the team, but they had time standards, and I met all the time standards. So apparently my mom, in all of her badass glory, said, you take all of them or you get none of them. So my sisters were trying out too. So they took all of us. And then 12 years later, I graduated from high school, having only swam for that team. And it was the greatest 12 years of my entire life.
How did your husband feel about being told that? I'm just wondering.
Well, he always jokes.
I'm going to throw that out there. Like, it was the greatest time of my life. Kids, you suck. Marriage, I ain't worried about you.
I'm over it.
I'm over this already, but these years swimming,
they were awesome. Well, he always jokes and he's like, swimming? Are you sure that was a real sport? He always tells me I'm really good at working out. And it's a running joke between me and my husband.
I don't think I've ever swimming. You're a really good workout person, huh? Like,
have you ever seen it comes from Eastbound and Down. Have you ever seen that show on HBO?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah. So someone I forget the main character's name, but someone walks up to him and he's a baseball player, and someone walks, he says, do I triathlons? He's like, no, I do a real sport. I'm not just good at really working out. So we always joke that I'm just really good at working out. I mean, if I took up triathlons, I mean, who knows what I'd be able to do?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's because what is that? Is it a 1 mile or 2 mile swim in a triathlon?
I think the full, like a true Ironman is 2.4 mile swim.
Because it's a 100-mile bike ride and a marathon, 26.2. I had a buddy who did those in the Marine Corps, and he did them for like fun, which I don't understand. I don't understand it at all.
I mean, they are kind of fun. So I was a distance swimmer. I swam distance. That's what I did. I was a freestyler. That's legitimately. So in high school, I swam the individual medley. For any non-swimmer out there, it's the event that has all 4 strokes. It's the 400 individual medley. You swim 100 yards or 100 meters of each stroke. But I was also a distance freestyler. So I swam. What I always tell people is, what did you swim? I swam all the events that Katie Ledecky swims: 200 free, 400 free, 800 free, and 1500 free. And by the time I got to college, all I swam was freestyle.
So
Yeah.
So I can swim? Does that, like, I can?
Yeah.
I don't
So-
just float.
So a part of the story that I failed to mention is the reason why they got us into swimming is that my dad nearly drowned when he was 4 years old.
Oh, really?
And so they made a vow that when they had children that we had to know how to swim in order to, if we were going to a pool, just to have survival skills. Well, 25 years later, they spent in a natatorium watching all three of us swim. All three of us swam. We were all single sport athletes. Again, there's three of us, total anomalies. And that's how it all came to be. My parents can't swim. They're the least athletic people on the planet, and they'll admit to that. That's fine. But I knew my oldest sister is about 7 years older than I am. I always knew I was going to swim in college. You couldn't convince me otherwise that I wasn't going to swim. It was my life. I loved every single minute of it.
And for those of you that are out there that are watching this right now, if you were an athlete or you were into a sport, let me know what you did. Also, please make sure you're sharing this to all the other sites you have there on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, anywhere that you can share it. Share away so we can get this story out and people can hear what we got going on here. The more you share it, the more people hear about it. And the goal is always the same. Try to get kicked off as many Facebook yard sale sites as you can, as my beautiful face just keeps popping up and they're like, who is this guy? But, and as you see scrolling across the bottom, you'll also see Lauren Ammon, and that's AMMON.com. Make sure you're checking out Lauren's site, and it's Miss Lauren Ammon on Instagram, and then Lauren Ammon Coaching on Facebook for her Facebook page. Make sure you're reaching out to those kind of things and checking out what she's got going on. So here you are, and I'm going to put this is my tagline for all this. I don't care if you swam for a Division 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, 17 level school. I always love it when people are like, who'd you play for? Well, in college, I played at such and such university. It's D2. You played D nothing. You played I'm not even going to say it. You played D nothing. So that level of commitment, I mean, you're in that, what I call the 10,000 hour club. You're a 10,000 hour person, meaning for those who don't know that, they say to be great at something, you have to have spent 10,000 hours doing it. One of my pseudo cousins, Kim, she's like my cousin's cousin, played softball for years. That's, that's an example of it. So you're in that 10,000 hour club, so here we are. Where'd you swim for? Who did your sister swim? Just curious. In college.
Yes, they both did. They both went to Wright State University here in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Right next to the Wright-Patt Air Force Base. And I went to Eastern Michigan University. So I swam among all of the Mid-American Conference schools. So Miami University, University of Buffalo, OU, Central Michigan. Yeah. Although Central Michigan didn't have a swim team, but yes, all very good schools.
So what was that experience like in and of itself? I mean, you're talking, I've heard stories from friends that were college wrestlers and college football players. I have cousins, and I don't care what level of athletes you are. You guys get treated differently.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like as a swimmer?
Yeah. So, swimming's considered a small sport in any school, right? We're not a huge revenue generator, if at all. But, what I always appreciated about the experience, looking at it simply from a sports experience, is, the team that I swam for here in Ohio was very prestigious at the time. I was well prepared to go in and handle any practice they threw at me. I mean, hell, sometimes there were practices I had that were harder in high school than I had in college.
Wow.
But then again, right, college restricts, or at least back in the olden days, and I think they still do. They restrict the number of hours that you can work out. And I think when I was there, I want to say 20, maybe 22 or something like that. So you had to get really creative in fitting all that time in. But from a special treatment standpoint, we certainly got a lot of free clothes. We got a lot of free gear. People knew who we were, especially on Eastern Michigan's campus. I mean, it was a big commuter campus, but sports were big there. And so people knew, I will say, I'm going to give a shout out to the men's swimming team, which unfortunately is no longer there. They were the winningest team in Eastern Michigan history. I mean, they had so many titles. It was ridiculous. And it was an absolute joy to watch them. So we were two separate teams, but we normally 98% of the time swam meets together, except for MAC championships. But it was a great experience. I mean, to be a part of something like that and to say, hey, I swam in college for 4 years. Those were the best 4 years of my life. Again, I'll joke about that with my husband. But I mean, it truly was something else. And I was so well prepared. It almost seemed like just an extension of high school in a way, but without my parents.
Right.
And a lot of drinking.
A lot more drinking going on, a lot more other things. You know, it was college. You know, you had to get the experience, the college experience.
Yeah.
I always laughed about that being in the Marine Corps. People were like, went to college for the college experience. I'm like, I went to the Marine Corps for the Marine Corps experience. I just didn't smoke pot. Trust me. We got all the drinking out of our system what we could.
Yeah.
Boone's Farm is a hell of a let me listen right here. Boone's Farm is a hell of a drug. Strawberry Fields.
It certainly is. In Michigan, it was Arbor Mist.
I always tell people you can always tell a good wine by the crack of the cap.
Yeah. Well, these days that is kind of true.
Well, now it's not so like shamed upon where like somebody like cracks it. Like I can remember being a kid, and my dad owned a liquor store and a bar, and if somebody like would have brought a bottle of wine and the cap would have cracked, my old man would have been like, really? The old man would have been like just mortified. Or those box wines, the old man would have been mortified. Nowadays, people are like, you do understand that this is like amazing, like great stuff. You know, it's on the exact same level. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it, brother. Yeah. Thank you so much Scott says, thank you for your service. I appreciate that. But yeah, so you're in college. When was it that it dawned on you as a swimmer, you know, not trying to be mean here, but you weren't an Olympic swimmer.
Nope.
You knew that wasn't going to be a thing. You know, probably won some meets, won some awards here and there, but when did it dawn on you that last meet, that last event, this is over?
Gosh, Scott, this might bring tears to my eyes. I didn't realize.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, first of all, I just want to address you saying I was an Olympic swimmer is not mean. I mean, think about the U.S. swimming footprint is phenomenal.
Oh, it's unreal.
Yes. So that wasn't mean by any means. But to answer the question, I really didn't realize it until after.
Really?
And I say that because, you know, again, we joke, I was a political science major. I had all intents of going to law school. I have all intentions of going to law school. And so I didn't do like a lot of internships and I didn't do a lot of interviewing because it was like, hey, I'm just going to go to school. And that allowed me the opportunity just to be all into swimming. And I tell this story a lot. I mean, the last swim meet I ever had was one of the worst, like hands down. If you ask me when was the worst, like the worst time you could ever remember swimming, it was my last meet. And it didn't dawn on me until I walked out of it. It was actually at Miami University, which is not far from where I grew up.
Miami of Ohio, right?
Yes, Miami of Ohio. And I thought, holy shit. I hope I can cuss on here.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's over.
It's done.
It is over. And I always say I had a career in it. I mean, I like to think if you did anything for 17 years, that's a career.
Absolutely.
And it was one of the hardest wrap-ups to a swim meet I've ever had in my life. Oh, it was the hardest.
Wow. Now, were you like, was there other seniors on the team, like in the same scenario? Was it a very senior team, or was it more like you were one of the old heads at that point on the team and there was a bunch of freshmen?
No, we had a great mix. So every class had a good representation, almost even in some respects, right? You know, when you think about a traveling team, there were 6 to 7 seniors. So, I mean, that's a pretty big graduating class.
That's a good size.
Yeah, for a swim team. And so we were all in the same boat, but we all had different career paths, right? I mean, one was already kind of working in college. You know, she worked kind of part-time. Another was going into communication. She knew exactly where she was going. I didn't. I was like, hey, I'm going to law school. Like, hey, that'll be great. Until I didn't get into law school.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
No, that didn't happen. And I didn't realize how much harder the news of not getting into law school was made because swimming was over.
So now when you say you didn't get into law school, was it because is law school LSATs?
Yeah. Oh,
So just
Connie did not pass that by any means. None whatsoever.
not today, Satan, not today. I ain't passing this shit.
Exactly.
Really?
So I
So
stopped swimming in February, took the LSAT in May,
all right,
and within 90 days of one another, my world
just
came
end.
crashing down.
So you graduate from Eastern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It's back to Kentucky at that point where you live.
Yeah.
Your parents back in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You do know my bourbon is Heaven's Hill, Kentucky bourbon. I just want you to know
There
that.
you go. That convinced Jeff.
7-year-old.
Nice.
You know.
Have you ever done the Bourbon Trail?
No, what is the Bourbon Trail? Is it
left turn? We'll talk later.
Left turn. Bourbon Trail. I'm all about it. So this ends up happening. You head back. So then what? I mean, because your sisters are, you said one sister's 7 years older than you. What's the next one's age?
5.5.
So they're definitely, they've graduated. They've moved on. I don't know if they're still at home at this point.
No, both were married at that time.
Okay, so both of them are married. They're out of the house. They've graduated from. Oh my goodness! And then here comes the empty nesters. You know, mom and dad are doing. You know, it looks like something out of one of those hippy dippy movies. They've got beaded curtains everywhere. They're ready to get back. They're ready to get back to it. No, mom's baking bread. Dad's got a forge in the backyard. But so what is that like coming home? You know, and this is the reason I'm asking this question, folks. I know some people might be out there like, dude, you're really kind of like scratching that scab, aren't you? No, because I want you to understand how we get to LaurenAmmon.com and how we get to that next level where we start talking about performance reimagined and that coaching level. It took a process to get there. So I want to kind of get to that point. So nobody be sending me nasty messages like, dude, why are you being so mean to her? And you got a little bit of fans out here. Like I said, the Kim's out there, too much swimming. Yeah, you know, might have been.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah, 100%.
100%. You've got Jesse Winstrup Heron.
Yeah.
All right. I'll make sure I said that. This woman is a damn beast. I agree with you. Just get her to root for the Ravens. She'd be all right.
Nope. Never.
Frank and Marcia, hippy dippy. Yep.
Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Not happening. So you come home. What is that like? Where do we go from there? Actually, let me ask this question first. I know I asked a bunch of questions now. What does mom and dad say when you come home?
God, what did they say when I got home? Well, the deal was always this, right? They would take care of undergrad. All of us had scholarships, so they didn't have to worry about that. If we wanted to do anything after, it was on our dime. So at that point, when I came home, we didn't yet know I hadn't passed the LSAT. So it was kind of just business as usual. If we know Lauren's coming home, she's going to go to law school. She's got to figure out where, that sort of stuff. And there was so I got home late April. I took it in mid-May, early June, something like that. I don't remember. So it was kind of a month of, hey, that's great. I get to unwind from swimming, unwind from college, unpack, and figure out next steps from there. It was the next month after not passing the LSAT that I spiraled mentally.
What does that mean? You spiraled mentally?
Well, here I was, an award-winning swimmer. You know, I was a state champion. I finished in the top 3 in college. I had a pretty successful career. I graduated with honors from Eastern Michigan University, graduated from honors from high school. There was up to that point, never a time I had faced like true failure, right? I mean, I'd fail along the way.
Right,
This
we all
was the
did.
biggest time. This was the biggest failure of my life. And I literally couldn't face people to tell them I didn't get into law school. It would be, I just decided it wasn't for me. I didn't feel like spending $100,000 of my own money. The shame settled in so deeply. I couldn't look at people and say, yeah, I just had this really successful career, 17 years. Not, 60 days later, I didn't get into law school and I have absolutely no clue what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So when I say I spiraled out of control mentally, that's what I mean.
So, now everybody's got a different take on that. When you say you spiraled out and all these things were going on, was there anything you did like, I'm on a bender now for the next, 2 months, or, because you were a swimmer, was it, back to the pool, that's where your comfort was, and, doing that? Was there anything that was kind of that, I'm in this hole and this is what I'm taking in there with me?
So no benders by any means. And it didn't even cross my mind to go back into the pool because I was so angry with my performance in my last meet. But what I didn't realize at that time, I didn't realize this until literally 2 years ago, right? Being 38, I didn't realize what had happened when I was 22, that I set myself up for a terrible meet that weekend.
Now, how'd you do that?
Yeah. So let's go a little further back into the story. So going into my senior year, obviously I knew it was my last year, right? Consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, all parts of me knew it was my last year. And I was just a raging bitch the entire year. I got in fights with my coach all the time. I was suspended for making a snarky comment one week and had to practice by myself. If you ever want to think of one of the worst punishments for a swimmer, it's to do an entire practice by themselves for an entire week. I didn't have great performances all year. And what I discovered just 2 years ago was that I was literally grieving before I even got to my last meet.
Wow.
And everything about me was conflict that year. Everything. With my teammates, with my roommates, with my coach, you walked up to me, I had something snarky to say. And it didn't dawn on me literally at that moment. It was so unconscious. I was so sad. When I say that I loved swimming, swimming was my entire world. Everything about it. When I say I was a one-sport athlete, there's a reason for that. I didn't want anything interfering with swimming, of being injured if I were to play soccer or, basketball, which, by the way, I'm the most uncoordinated person on the planet. So playing soccer or basketball would never enter into my mind, or anything like softball. Swimming was it. It's all I ever wanted to do. And I think that year, looking back on it now, everything leading up to that moment is like, I didn't even want to face that last swim meet. I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror and say, this is the last time you're swimming the 500. Now, one of the stories from that meet, I was in heat 8 or whatever. I don't know. Who cares? And I remember at heat 6, standing behind the blocks, bawling my eyes out. And my coach looked at me and he's like, what the hell is wrong? And I looked at him and I said, this could be the last time I ever swim this event. And he said, okay, now turn around and get your ass to the block. You need to swim.
Now, I'm going to pause you for a second. That we've recently seen this with athletes at those collegiate levels and these upper levels where they say, they've been pushed for so long. Look, I mean, I was athletic, but I was a horrible athlete, if that makes sense to people. I can do things, but I'm not tall. I'm 5'8". I'm the shortest person in my father's family, period. You know, I was never that person. But to hear you say that, just to kind of fast forward for a minute, when you hear of some of these current athletes that are taking the mental break, walking away from their sports, gosh, wasn't Gabby? Gosh, what the heck was her name? I can't think of it. The gymnast that walked away in the middle.
Simone Biles.
Simone Biles. Thank you. I was thinking Gabby, whatever Gabby's last name is.
Gabby Reese?
Yeah, Gabby Reese. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you see that, and especially with having the performance reimagined, being able to, working with those folks and being able to go on laurenammon.com and all those spots to find out. But when you see this going on, how do you feel about that when they talk about, like, I'm done with these coaches being like this to me? There was one that recently, like a swim coach, wasn't it, that got in trouble or something because of the way he treated the athletes or something?
Yeah, there have been some of them.
I hear swim coaches are just, a lot of them are just dicks. Like, get in the water. Like, that's the way it's kind of been put out there.
Yes and no. So to answer the first question, when these athletes are starting to get really vocal about taking a break or that they are suffering from mental challenges, it makes total sense, right? It's actually amazing to me that I did it for so long, and that was that last year, right? And I actually didn't even realize it. Like, I love this sport so much. It wasn't that I was being pushed physically. It was more like, I don't want to face what's coming. But what every athlete goes through at any level, right? Even if you're at elite high school level, maybe you don't make it to college, like, there's still pressure in those moments. Like, one of the things from a non-athletic life is that, and this is like no judgment statement, but it's the added pressure of always being on display. And by that, I mean, like, you're constantly performing in front of other people. You don't necessarily always recognize it, right? If you're in the moment, you're really only focusing on yourself and being better than you were the day before. So it's not always that you kind of see that, but looking at it from the most elite level, right here in the United States, we have a terrible habit of putting people on pedestals, saying, look at the Olympics, right? So,
Yes.
with the face of the Olympics, last Olympics, were Simone Biles, Katie Ledecky, and Caleb Dressel.
Yeah.
Of those three, who's the only one who had a shining moment? It was Caleb Dressel. Is because every other Olympics before that, he was a known name, and he's a phenomenal swimmer. He was a known name, but he wasn't like the upper echelon because, Michael Phelps was still there and all the big names were still there. But we have a terrible habit of lifting these people up on a pedestal so high that sometimes the only thing they can do is fall. Is because we say, Katie Ledecky, Simone Biles, you are the faces of the United States. And then to send them into what they went into in 2020, I mean, it's perfectly understandable that they were really emotional moments and they feel pushed, and that at the elite level, athletes are under a ton. And, if you're not a big name, fun fact, you're not making a ton of money.
Right.
And so if you're going to the Olympics, you either likely have a part-time job, you may get a stipend from your U.S. national team, may not cover everything. Well, and those are some of the things behind the scenes people don't realize.
Have you ever looked at the pay rates from other countries compared to the U.S.? So they did this during the Olympics, the Winter Olympics this year. I saw it where they were talking about, and I'd be lying to you if I remember all the numbers, but it was something like they would show like one of these smaller nations, and they would be like, oh, these guys, $100 and some odd $1,000, a home, this, that, and the other. And then they would show another country, and they were going down the list, and then they got the U.S. athletes, and it was like $15 and a Happy Meal and a pat on the back, and better be there for that photo shoot. There was really, we don't do anything for those folks. We just expect you to perform.
Yeah, so you get a gold medal, we slap you on the ass.
Right. There you go. Thanks for that. Appreciate you. Our medal count's better than your medal count. Our people are going to work it. But hey, you might get a commercial on Home Depot. You might get on the Lowe's commercial, maybe even Dick's Sporting Good. But I mean, the reality of it is that's where we're at. Real quick, I want to go through these. Kim says, and I know what Kim's talking about. She's saying congratulations for all your academic accolades and everything that you did.
Oh, thank you.
Jesse says uncoordinated. She's a fantastic dancer. we may have another Dancing with the Stars person right here. Jesse also said we've seen this on a collegiate level and Olympic level. Absolutely. Scott says you got a great point. And Laurie says absolutely makes sense. Laurie, we got to get you. We're going to reschedule you. We got to figure out when that's going to be. But absolutely. I mean, this is just hearing it. You know, I have sons that played sports, very active in sports. And we experienced it as a family when my son, who's now 26, I had to pull him from football. He couldn't play football anymore because he's 5'5". I'm gonna tell you right now. I say this. I've said this to Beanie Anderson, who did Beanie ever? I have to talk about that afterwards. But I've said it to other people. My son at 5'5" in high school to this day is still the best running back I've ever seen in my life. And not as a dad. I've just never seen someone hit the hole, keep his legs churning, be able to bounce to the outside and run. But problem was the kid was 5'5". And he's 5'5", built like his dad. I'm not a big guy. So he was going from he was in his junior year of high school and got ran over a couple of times. They said, nope, you can play on JV. You can't play up here because of his size. And then he got another concussion and I had to pull him. And this was like in his lifetime, like his 5th or 6th one in his lifetime. It's like, son, you're not playing anymore. He was devastated.
Yeah.
And this is a kid who played since he was 9 years old. He not 17 years like yourself, but since he was 9. And every sport he ever played, he was good at. Yeah. And he was the kid that I'm going to go wrestle this year and pins all the other kids, just runs right over him using a football mentality. I'm going to play lacrosse this year. First game, first time he touches the ball, he scores a goal. You know, that was the kid he was. But as you're speaking, I was on the outside of that. I was your coach. And as I'm listening to you, I was your coach. I was the one going, suck it up, Buttercup, get your ass back out there. No one wants to hear you. And now I feel like a bad dad now. Thanks for making me feel like a bad dad.
Yeah. Well, clarifying, my coach wasn't being mean. He was just like, I need you just to turn around and swim because you have no other option. That's inside. I loved that coach who said that to me. But you bring up a great point is that more and more, actually younger and younger, we're starting to see some mental challenges among athletes.
Right.
And you mentioned something about kind of a physical ailment, right? So your son suffered multiple concussions.
Yeah.
So let's take concussions aside because that is a special occasion or a special situation. But let's say he hurt his knee, right? No one would question, you have a hurt knee. You need to.
Oh, dude, you froze for a second.
But we don't give the same.
Lauren, you're freezing.
I'm here.
Lauren, you're freezing. So I heard hurt knee, and then we lost you. No one would question hurt knee, and we lost you for a minute.
Okay, sorry about that. So we talk about the physical ailment, right? When we see an athlete who has a physical injury, no one questions to have them sit out, right? No, you're not playing today, right? Think of all these athletes who are having mental challenges. No one, I shouldn't say no one, but very few are saying, sit out. Right. Take care of yourself. You've got to get your mind right in order to be there for your performance. And that's really what I work on. Yes. Be there for yourself. Be there for your team. Be there for whatever.
Stop being selfish.
Because the more and more that we pile on the stressors, not only from athletics, but from every other aspect in life that athletes have to deal with, the more we pile on these stressors, the more challenging it is for them to get their head in the game. There's something I always say, we're not solving for mental health. The definition of health is complete well-being, being of sound mind, body, and spirit, free of disease and illness. That is what health means. Mental health is not what we're solving. Mental health is what we're going after. We're solving the stress that comes from all the shit that happens inside of a sport and outside of it, and all the anxiety that comes because we don't deal with the stress, and any deep depression that comes because we don't deal with the anxiety.
So how do we get to where we are now, Performance Reimagined, LaurenAmmon.com? How do we get from the 22, 23-year-old young lady feeling like you just got poo-pooed on and you've got to go make something happen? I mean, how do we get to that point?
Yeah, so I'll go really fast with this one because I'll skip all the boring parts. I actually eventually went and got my master's in HR, so I had the opportunity to get a full ride, so I didn't have to pay for that
shitty degree
either.
like I've got.
I know, right? Shitty degree. So got into HR, spent 12 years there, and just found that wasn't the place for me. I don't think it dawned on me that I wasn't really made for corporate America. I have a little bit too much of a direct communication, particularly for a female, and people don't particularly care for that. And I'm very competitive. Again, not a fun
HR
quality, not a fun quality in HR, nor for a female.
No.
So fun fact.
Fun facts about HR, folks, if you didn't know it. They like to be if you didn't know it, and most of them that I know that are HR, and I'm a guy with an HR degree, are the most politically incorrect people you will ever meet in your life. They say shit behind that door like, "Did you see that asshole just came in here talking about, oh, I need more money. Get on out of here." But when you walk in, they're like, oh, "I'm so sorry about that. That's so sad. That's just such a..." Go ahead and fill that out right there. And you walk out the door, they're like, "We going out for happy hour? Stupid. I ain't doing nothing. Throw that shit away." That's HR. If you didn't know that's what your HR is doing, that is what your HR is doing. I promise you.
That's a pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, no.
So being in that space, I was exposed. I mean, I can neither confirm nor deny. Being in that space, being exposed to executive coaches. And so I thought, well, that might be a career path for me. So I went and got my coaching certification. I spent about a year doing it. So I went through a really in-depth process. A lot of what I do is backed by psychology, though I just don't have the formal letters. Opened my business in January of 2020. Really
so smart.
I know. It was the greatest decision I've ever made. Actually, at the time, it really was.
Seemed like it made perfect sense.
It did. So I opened the business to be more about leadership development and career transition, right? You know, going back to my roots and looking at it back, I'm like, that's not where you really want it to be, but you know, learning is half the battle. But anyway, fast forward to January of 2021, or no, September of 2021, right before the Olympics started. And I just happened to say to our dear friend, Donnie Bovine,
"Oh, Donnie,
I wonder what it would be like." Yeah. God.
I posted this on the SCN page.
Oh, yeah.
Just so you know. So I'm hoping he's watching.
I hope so.
Little crayon eater.
I owed a debt of gratitude to him, so I will not say anything bad about him.
One Marine to another, I'll say it all day.
So it was before the Olympics, and the Olympics started, and this is where we come back to Simone Biles and Katie Ledecky. It was the night that Simone Biles removed herself from competition. And it was the same night that Katie Ledecky won gold in the 1,500 meter freestyle, but had a terrible swim. I mean, she was 20 seconds off of her world record. And the head Michael Phelps was talking to Mike Tirico, and he said, competing at this level was really overwhelming. Fun fact, competing at any elite level is really overwhelming. We just want someone to talk to. We just want someone who listens and allows us to be vulnerable and doesn't want to fix us. And I sat in my chair watching the Olympics, started bawling my eyes out because I just thought, well, holy shit, the most prolific Olympian of my lifetime.
U.S. history.
Yeah. Just told the world we have no one to support us.
That's pretty incredible.
And I thought, yeah, I was literally blown away. I thought, how is that possible? It's not as if sports psychology is new. No. It's not as if these resources don't exist. And so I thought to myself, well, where's the gap? Is it access? Is it awareness? Is it, shame among athletes? Is it shame among the U.S. institutions to say, oh God, don't look behind the curtain. Our athletes are
Right.
all head cases. No one wants to see that. And so I completely pivoted my business literally that night and said, I now know my calling. It's to work with athletes.
Scott calls it
And
your
retiring
aha
athletes.
moment. Your aha moment. Well, you bring that up. I mean, we've had so many things come out about our Olympic programs, our Olympic athletes. I mean, the running joke was always when we were kids, the East German, athletes,
Oh, gosh, yes.
the East German women's team that were more of a man than I could ever hope to be. Better beard than mine too, most of them. But, that was a running joke that we always heard, SNL, stuff like that, like was these things. But, I can still remember and we kind of mentioned this, athletes that broke down were weak. You're weak. You're a millionaire. What the hell are you bitching about? I'm out here, breaking rocks. We think about these things, but at the same time, you've said it. We put them on a pedestal. We put them above others. We expect a level of performance. I'll even, I'm kind of curious about this. This just came to mind. When you think about not AJ Brown, but Antonio Brown, the wide receiver, Antonio Brown, when you see somebody like that with the outbursts and the ridiculousness, or, now looking back at a Terrell Owens, guys at the NFL level, athletes, and I feel like today we see them more than we do the baseball players of before. But when you see athletes at that level having these, just wackadoo moments, how do you see that with what you do today?
Yeah. Well, the Antonio Brown one, I mean, he even came out and said, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not having any mental breakdowns. And I certainly never want to speculate, but that kind of behavior would lead me to believe that there's something, whether it's conscious for him or not, that's going on with him that is pushing him to do those things. I mean,
Right.
no, how do I?
No stable mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say something non-PC is gonna come out of my mouth.
Right,
I'm
it's
gonna
okay.
comment about it.
But I mean, stable mind, or a person of reasonable thought at the time.
Yeah,
is
isn't
gonna
gonna leave the game in the middle of it, take off his shirt and run, and do his thing, and then come back and say, no, I'm totally fine.
Right.
I mean, it could be a statement, I don't know, but that statement, is backed by some unconscious pattern in his mind that convinces him, yeah, that was the right thing to do in that moment, without thinking,
So when you're talking to these athletes and different levels and different people at these levels, what are some of the things that, because one of the first things that come to mind to me is, even yourself, 17 years of swimming, you probably many times were referred to, oh, you're the swimming girls. You're the girls. You're the three girls that swim. You were referred to at that and always held at that level, given that level of prestige. And, depending upon, especially if you're a pro athlete, you're given that level of prestige. How do you help somebody who no longer does anyone care? And I don't mean that in a mean way, but reality of it is I'm a big Mike. Do you know who Mike Devereaux is? You probably have no idea who Mike Devereaux is.
No.
Mike Devereaux played for the Dodgers, then played for the Baltimore Orioles through the 90s. He, all time, one of my favorite baseball players. Love the guy. I love Mike Devereaux. Me and his family are the only people. So what do you say to those kind of people? Because I think that's one of the biggest things for these athletes is going from everyone loves me to no one knows me. Like, how do you even start to address that?
Yes. So that is a big thing. And you said before, like, even though I didn't make it to the Olympics, I mean, that was my identity. I was known for swimming. My sisters were known for swimming. I even had the opportunity to speak to an Olympic gold medalist, actually, which was one of the greatest moments of my life. And this person said, I've done all these things.
None of these are your children. None of these are your husband. We're on to 3
right
now.
There's a running theme here. When
Look, we're on to 3 and they're all sports. Brother, I don't know where you're at. Send me a message, a couple of winky emojis. I know you need help. Just let us know.
So I was speaking to this Olympic gold medalist, and they said, I've done all these things in my life, and I know I'm known for a race that lasted fewer than 2 minutes. And to have heard that from an Olympian, I thought, oh my gosh, right? Because I even caught myself in the moment of, oh my God, I just put them on a pedestal.
Right.
So, right. So it's like, all comes back. But it's the concept of, because it's finding the balance between who you were and who you want to be in life after sports, right? And oftentimes what can happen with athletes, either I'm going to cut it off, no longer going to call myself this, or no longer going to associate with it whatsoever, or they stay in the moment of, oh, but it was over there. I don't, how do I
get back there?
How do I get
that
there?
back?
Yes. So first and foremost, what I always work with athletes coming out of transition is take a moment. Process what you went through. Write all of your highlights down, or talk into a microphone. I don't care what you do. Just get it all out. Write all your highlights. Take all your lowlights. What were the shittiest moments you have? What would you never want to see again? Or what would you want to take back? Look at those two things, right? Those side by side, and then say, what are my 3 takeaways from that? What are the top 3 things that I learned about myself from those moments? And it's a really simple, and it sounds so silly, but it's a really simple exercise just to take a moment. Because oftentimes, like, I'll give you my experience. I had the shittiest meet of my life. I literally took my cap and my goggles in my hand at the very last event, threw it behind me without even looking. They landed in the garbage can. I was like, well, that pretty much sums it up. And I walked out of that natatorium thinking, I'm done. I never want to look at this again. That was me. I was the one who was like, shut it off. Never want to see it again. Never want to talk about it again. Ironically, here I am, right?
Right.
But I never processed it. I didn't process it until I was 38 years old.
38. And then it comes to you. Jesse says it's almost like identifying mind fuck. Yeah, no. And Kim says, great idea I think it's a great idea no matter what you do, to look at what are you taking away from this that's a positive? What are you taking away from this that's a negative? Process what you never have to deal with again, and then move forward from there. Mm-hmm. Because at least identifying it, no matter what you do, is in that list. So how have athletes, I mean, you had this aha moment. How have athletes or coaches on teams been receptive to you reaching out to them and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'd like to talk to your athletes? Or, I mean, I imagine most of them right now are that collegiate or prior pro athletes. We're not at that high school level, but me personally, I could see this from a high school level. I think this would make perfect sense to me. But where are you? How are they receiving you when you reach out to them?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I actually did start reaching out to high schools because I recognized the opportunity to do so for a number of different reasons, just because we're seeing so many mental challenges, even at younger ages. Different story for a different day, but super receptive. I mean,
high schools are more receptive than
all of them.
Okay.
All of them
so everybody's been like, yeah, come talk to us.
Yes. Come talk to us. I would say the most actually responsive in this moment for current athletes are high schools.
I could see that.
Yes.
I mean, because there's the 1% rule. 1% of all 1% of all high school athletes can play at a collegiate level. And for football, 1% of all those athletes can play at the NFL level. Mm-hmm. Don't ask me why I know these numbers. It was part of my recruiting process in the Marine Corps to know these numbers. But I mean, you're getting into the 1%. But I mean, so what is even the approach to a school? I'm very curious of that. And if it's, if you got your little ninja skills, I understand. But I'm really curious, like, how do you reach out to them and go, hey, these guys are going to go deal with this. Let me talk to you. Like, how do you approach them?
Yeah. So I have made a lot of great connections with athletic directors, right? So going straight to the top of the athletic chain, so to speak, and really starting to talk with them, learning their challenges among their athletes and what's going on. Unfortunately, what's happening, very sadly, is that suicide is a growing
Huge.
trend, unfortunately, and we're starting to see that it is affecting student athletes at a very high rate. And so, starting to talk with them to understand their challenges, and to give everybody a little preview, what we're really starting to work on is there's a lot of data. When you look up student athlete data, there's a lot of data for NCAA athletes. There's not a lot of data for high school athletes.
No, not at all.
And so that's kind of the approach right now, is to really go in and say, hey, let us figure out what's actually on the mind of your athletes. We'll give you the data. We'll let you know what they're saying. And we'll build a program specifically for your athletes. We'll prove to you that working on their mind works on their performance. And then we'll figure out how to reach the other athletes, whether we bring in strategic partners or we give that data to some, whatever the case may be, to focus on the other athletes. Because what we're also hearing is, we've got to approach everybody, which I totally understand. But to throw everything, at once, let's use a small populations, use the athletes, because we know that it's affecting them at a higher rate. So let us show you that our work truly does. When you train your mind like you train your body, your performance will skyrocket.
Absolutely. I can't even begin to explain to you. I mean, I always go back to my time in the Marine Corps, but yeah, we trained like athletes. We absolutely trained like athletes, but at the same time, we were pushed academically very heavily, knowing this, knowing that, memorize, you got to know all the information. Want to keep, because I love all the different comments that we're getting here. Jesse's a fan. She's got a tattoo of you. I think she got a tattoo of you, but at the that's too funny. But at the time, that was the coping skill for you, like throwing your stuff away. And that's exactly why athletes need a Lauren Ammon in their life. Kim, that's awesome. And it really is. So is there any particular athletic group that, oh shit, we just got you paid. Wait a second, hold on. Scott says, sold, contract on its way. Great approach. And we know being an elite athlete yourself opens those doors. Shit, we just got you paid. I just need a cut. I mean, I'm probably trying to get paid himself. I mean, I'm just put that out there. Kim's digging this, but I mean, really, have you seen any differences in athletes? I jokingly say, like, I don't think the badminton team's really like stressing that hard, in my mind. But that, again, that's me, where, it might be the other side of it. Like the badminton team's like, you don't understand what badminton nationals are like. That birdie's coming right at you. I see that shit in my dreams. Like, I don't know. Have you seen any particular athletic groups or dealt with ones that are more likely to, when you come and meet with them, or maybe let me roll it back. I ask 100 questions.
It's okay.
See, that's why, right there. So y'all know Lauren's good. She goes, it's okay. It's all right. Get your thoughts together.
Just take your time.
Take your time. No, just get your thoughts together. Are they presenting you to all the athletes? Like, hey, we're just getting all the athletes together. It's going to be one big thing in the auditorium. You give them a presentation, and then later on they're able to reach out to you. Is it a flyer that goes out to the parents that say, hey, if your child's having issues, this is who you can contact. We've contracted them, or meeting with the guidance counselor. What's that process like to get these kids? Because the high school piece, I'm going to be honest with you, that to me, get it before it's got to the other level.
Yeah. Prepare them for college.
Right. Before, we joked around about drinking in college and stuff like that. Before that's the coping mechanism.
Right.
Get to them before then. So how's the approach for a high school kid?
Yeah. So it's happening in a number of different ways. The more that people are learning about what I do, particularly here in Cincinnati, for anybody who knows Cincinnati, it's a big city, small town. We all know one another. So people are bringing me in to talk with ADs. I'm actually making a presentation tomorrow to coaches. So that's one thing that we're experimenting with as well, is creating this trifecta. I always do this, right? So putting the athlete at the top, particularly in high school, right? So putting the athlete at the top, and then you have your coaches and your parents. So creating this level of touch points for all of them to help them understand that, from a high school athlete's perspective, that is their world, their coach and their parent, right? And oftentimes, if these two aren't on the same page, who's in the middle?
Right. Kid has to deal with it.
Yeah. So it could be making presentation to coaches, talking to ADs. Some parents are even knocking on my door and saying, hey, come on in. We know what you do. It's really important. We'll provide you all the contact information to get in front of, whether it be the superintendent or the school board, really just to understand what their agenda is and how we can fit into it. There's been a lot of great response. And right now it's a matter of, I want to go back to the original question too, of seeing what teams it's really standing out among. Right now, I can't discern if it's one versus the other versus another, right? And that is where the data collection comes in to say, are there pockets? Because here's what's happening, and I'll be very blunt about this, and I hope that anybody who's listening can do so with an open mind, is that what I'm gathering, what my intuition and what my perception is telling me, is that there's all these adults talking about how to fix the problem. I want to go straight to the athletes.
Right. Skip over the adult.
You tell me or to tell the organization, right? You will do all this data collection, we'll do these surveys and interviews. You tell me what the big challenge is, and we'll solve for your problem. Versus maybe, hey, at the school level, we've seen these really big unfortunate events. We need to solve for this immediately. Here's the strategy. And I'm really cautious to say, I don't want to give you a strategy until I know what actually is going on inside those athletes' mind. And so that's why it's challenging for me right now to say it's football versus baseball, it's swimming versus soccer versus softball versus basketball versus whatever the case may be. My intuition tells me it's a level playing field across all of them.
Just kids.
Yeah.
How about any difference between male and female athletes?
Yes, very different, particularly in the high school, right? Partly because going into high school, and we're going to get, we're talking about some uncomfortable things here, right? So going into high school, they're all going through puberty. And for guys, as an athlete, right, when you're 12 and the girls are beating you, that's highly embarrassing. But once you hit puberty, boom, you skyrocket no matter what the sport is. And for girls, some can skate by and, there's not a huge dip, but others can take a massive nosedive because puberty just completely changes their world. So in high school, there's a bit of a difference there simply because of that. But as you kind of age up into kind of the 17, 18-year-olds, that's not necessarily as drastic of a difference anymore.
Right.
I think what I'm seeing is girls have a little bit easier time being vulnerable, or at least sharing and being articulating what's going on.
They're told it's okay.
It's okay. Guys, as you can imagine, not as...
Yeah, no, shut your mouth. Suck it up, buttercup.
Except for those.
You play soccer.
No.
Soccer. Oh, no. Okay,
except for those who are on an elite track, right? What I'm starting to see is, parents wanting to say, how do we maybe kind of prepare them for this? Or the parents are starting to really think starting ahead. And then really it's my job to get the athletes to open up and to really focus on what is going in your mind and creating that safe space. And that's not to diminish anything I do by any means, because it's not simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, is to create that space that Michael Phelps was talking about.
Well,
the space to be vulnerable.
You bring up an interesting point that I want people to think about. And I wonder if it's, if you're the Lamar Jacksons in football, if you're, God, I can't think of his name right now, used to pitch for for Washington, or Ian Anderson, for the Braves, you're on that elite level professional athlete, the Miles and Lyle Thompsons for lacrosse. You're on that level. Your parents see you as that elite athlete also. I wonder if what you just said about that elite level, if that kid who's, mom and dad knows you're not playing pro. I love you, but we know you're not playing. My son was 5'5". I knew he was never going to be at that level. I think he had this talent. You have no idea how much I wish that kid would coach football. You have no idea. Derek, you talking about East Stroudsburg? I don't know what you're talking about. SUC Stroudsburg. Wondering if you're thinking about East Stroudsburg. But my that different level, I wonder if parents kind of go, you're fine. Like, have you run into that where that kid who isn't on that elite level, like you mentioned, that has a chance at even a D3 school, compared to the kid who knows that when high school ends, so does that part of their career. Those kids, the parents treat it differently because the parent thinks, you understand, you're not gonna. This is over. Like that kid, that kid now thinking about what you're saying, that kid needs almost probably more help than the other one because that kid worked his ass off to get to that point, to be on that team, and to just be told, well, you're okay. This is over. You're fine. You understand that.
Yeah. Parents are in a precarious position because, I'll use my parents as an example. Like I said, not the most athletic people on the planet, but the most supportive, right? I mean, my parents would every single.
Would you tell me what they did for a living, just out of curiosity?
They both worked in healthcare, actually. My mom was a nurse and my dad was some hospital administrator.
Okay. I was just curious if you were going to be like, dad was a farmer and mom was like a house marm. And I was in my mind, I'd be like, that's a dude that, like, physically he might not have been an athlete, but he was a physical person.
No, not far from it. But I was saying parents are in a precarious position is because, my parents would just say, you've always have next time, which is true, right? Logically, every athlete knows that there's next time. But it's that time, right? You had an expectation. Right. That's what you wanted to do in that moment. And that's something that I work on with athletes. But then you also have the parents who cannot relate at all, right? My parents were not even remotely athletic. So while they wanted to support me, they couldn't relate what I was going through. Then you have the other end of the extreme, those who can relate, who know what you're going through, but grew up in a time where the only expectation was to get up, suck it up, buttercup, you got next time to go, right? And that's a different mindset. I'd be curious to talk to all those athletes now and how they get through life and suck it up and move on. Can be healthy in some respects. Yeah, can be healthy in some respects.
Just so you know, that's what we do.
Yeah.
That was, like I said, I'm from that generation, time in the Marine Corps, reach down, tug it and make sure it's still there and go on it. Please, folks, don't be upset, but that's what they used to tell us. Like, reach down, check it, make sure it's still there. Get at it, Marine.
Yeah.
And I know that's what we're expected. That's what this country expects of their service members, but that's what you expect of your athlete also.
Yeah.
Is, don't worry about it that your legs behind your ear and your right arm's, going the wrong way. Suck it up. You can get back out there and play.
Yeah. Or you're weak if you show anything. Yeah. A competitive disadvantage. But I'll use me as a specific example, right? So I have an athlete. My older son is a phenomenal athlete: football, basketball, baseball, swimming, soccer, right? You name it, he does it. And even in my profession, I know what I'm doing. This is what I do every single day. And he looks at me and he's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Kid knows I swam for 15 years, or 17 years, knows that I do this. And he still doesn't listen. So that's why I say they're in this precarious position, because it doesn't necessarily matter what a parent says. They're parent, they're mom and dad. So that's why it's so valuable to have kind of an outside perspective and have a safe space where athletes, both in the game and coming out of it, have a space to process what they're going through.
Absolutely. And now I know what Derek was talking about. Steven Stroudsburg. You nailed it, Derek. You are not on delay, brother. Steven Stroudsburg is exactly who I was thinking of. At first, I was thinking you were talking about East Stroudsburg University. You nailed it. Thank you. You are the man. You get applause and everything. Because I'm reading, I'm like, It is Steven Strasburg. He was like had Tommy John surgery. The guy was supposed to be the second coming of pitching, everything. So I want to kind of put a bow on all this, get ready to close the bar up, because I want people to reach out to you as a parent. God, I wish, I'll be honest with you, I wish this existed, and maybe it did. Like, I only knew of people that did what you did when we started hearing about the 22-year-old athlete who gets 120 million, 36 million, $50 million contract guy who everybody like, and then all of a sudden he buys the entire neighborhood, sneakers and cars and everything else. And, that's when I started hearing about like all these athletes, they're starting to have life coaches. They're starting to put those people into place. We only heard about it at that level till you and I met. I never heard at a true reasonable level, any of those kind of things. And this is really a game changer. So again, Performance Reimagined. Now that's your process, right?
Mm-hmm. And yes. Mm-hmm.
LaurenAmmon.com. You can go to Lauren Ammon Coaching on Facebook and you can find her there. Reach out. If you've got a student athlete, you've got a kid who's an athlete who is having those kind of anxieties. They know that this is coming to an end, and you're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. Lauren may not be in your neighborhood. Started up. I can't even sing the neighborhood song. That wouldn't be right. Started with some trouble in my neighborhood. That's a whole nother subject.
It's too soon. It's too soon.
Too soon. Too soon. I don't give a shit. Will ain't smacking the fuck out of me. It ain't gonna work, bro. You might be Philly. I will show you East Baltimore. But reach out to Lauren and talk to her. And you can also I'm gonna plug it also. You can find her on Lauren Ammon on LinkedIn, which is where this is going out at.
Yep.
And reach out and talk to her. Anything that, as we're getting ready to close this up, anything that you would want them to prepare before that conversation or have ready, things that you're like, hey, I need to know this.
Yeah. Importantly, are you a current athlete or a retiring athlete, or even retired, right? Whether you've just retired or you've been retired for a couple years, like me. If you're a slow learner, 17 years later, you learn what was going on. I'd love to know that, kind of where you are in your process in terms of where you're really struggling. What are your biggest challenges specific to the mental side, right? But oftentimes a lot of people say, well, I'm not hitting this, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not where I want to be. All of that is mental, right? Everything that's going on, any block that's happening in terms of performance is something going on up here.
Right.
So, I'm always approached, let's just sit down. Let's talk. Help me understand where you are. And then we'll decide, are you and I a fit? And if we are, where, from a current athlete perspective, do you really fit into my world or the Performance Reimagined world? Or if you're retiring, where do you fit into the Performance Reimagined world? Because
say that again, Performance Reimagined world.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother thing we missed completely.
Yeah, right.
But
like you said, it's kind of the process. And that's the whole thing is even if you're a current athlete or you're a retiring athlete, the concept of Performance Reimagined, you've had expectations of who you are and how you perform to this point. As we work together, you now see yourself in a completely different point of view, and thus your performance goes up, and now your performance is reimagined.
I like it. Kim says you're a total game changer.
Oh, thanks, Kim.
Scott, who's signing a contract with you any moment now, also says many thanks. So again, LaurenAmmon.com, Lauren Ammon Coaching on Facebook, Lauren Ammon, and that's Ammon. And she actually spells Lauren the normal way. There's not anything crazy going on there. Lauren. And then the process, Performance Reimagined. If you have somebody that you're looking for, and if for whatever reason you're not comfortable reaching out to Lauren, you can find us, reach out to me, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, everything's the Above the Bar podcast. If you reach out to me and let me know what's going on, I'll be happy to connect you. There's nothing like a warm handshake. I know sometimes people just reaching out to cold to people is tough to people. Like, you're just getting so much attention. Kim says, you're welcome. Keep up the great work. Your best friend with a tattoo on. She said she got a tattoo on her neck with your name. That's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird. Just like Lauren Ammon right there on the side of my neck. Loved it all. Thank you. But, be happy to reach out. And I'm going to tell you something here in a minute, Lauren. You're listening good to me.
Yeah.
Got your good listening ears on.
Intently.
Do
Yes.
not log out after the show is over. We
Okay.
have to talk for a moment.
Okay.
Do not log. Too many people like some people log out. And
Jen.
I'm like calling them, and I'm like, "Hey, I said don't log out," and they're like, "I'm sorry." Well, damn, did the show suck that much for you? But as always, on every show, it's always the same in the process here. You as the guest is going to get the last word. So what is the last word from Lauren, the coach? I'm saying your new name. That's it. Lauren, hashtag the coach.
The coach.
Lauren, hashtag the coach. Sorry, Coach K. Shit didn't work out for you. Lauren, the coach Ammon. What is the final word for everyone?
Do I get one word or do I get multiple?
No, you get like whatever you need to say. Like, you get
okay.
the final words.
Excellent. So I will say to anybody out there who has high school athletes or retiring collegiate, even pro athletes, we are putting together some really phenomenal programs that will allow the opportunity to build some community within the athletic space. So you will always have that connected network. So we're really excited about that. And for all the athletes out there, you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be seen. And there are absolutely resources out there available to you, regardless if they're me or not, to open up and find what truly is blocking you. And that there are people out there who care and see your struggle as a strength.
Alrighty, folks. Be sure to push your stool in.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation. Found on earplugpodcast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.